All right, time for us to get started in here. We are going to be doing this quarter a class on seasons of parenting, and we are glad to have each of you with us. A lot of people cleared out because I guess they're done with parenting, but this is something we hope will be helpful for you as we kind of look at some things together and talk about things. You know, when we design our classes, like we're already working on next year's classes, what we want to do. And so little did we know we'd have such a population explosion here. And we've got a lot of little babies being born. I think this series of classes will also be good for grandparents as we think about the role we play and some things along that line. And so that's kind of where we're going with that. We have some outlines in the back with some things for you to fill out and write in as we go along with this. I hope will be helpful for you. When we talk about parenting, man, that's a big topic. There's so many different directions you can go. I remember when we first became parents, there was a magazine, it may still be out there, a magazine called Parenting. And someone subscribed. I guess they thought Mr. Roger needed help. So we started taking it. But it's just full of all kinds of tips and ideas and yada, yada, yada. And we're not going to do all that here. We're going to try to stay in the lane of the Bible here pretty much. But what we do want this to be is your class. So we want you to be comfortable about bringing up things, talking about things. One of the neat parallels we see in the Bible is God as a parent. In the prophets, he's sometimes portrayed as a husband, but he's also portrayed as a parent. The story of the prodigal son, God is the father. God is the parent. So there's a lot of little lessons through that we can talk about and kind of look at. I hope will be helpful for you. In this lesson today, we're just going to give you a big picture of what we're going to do and talk about such things. But once you're a parent, you're always a parent. You can't about a third of the way through say, no, this is just not working out for me. I resign. There's no resigning. You can't resign from that. And one of the things you will learn, especially for our young parents, is that as your child grows, parenting changes, okay? And those that get it do well. Those that don't get it don't do well. And so those are some things we're going to be kind of looking at here. As you notice on your outline here, this class is a biblical look at parenting. There are enough challenges and hurdles and battles facing you as parents. You don't need more guilt. A lot of times when you hear sermons about parenting or classes on that, it's just guilt, 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 and you feel like, well, my poor child has no hope. We're not going to do that. We want to give you encouragement, give you hope. We want to share things that will help you. But to understand that sweet, sweet little baby that comes into the world grows into the terrible twos and the defiant threes and the troublesome teens. But one of the things that helps us is realize each one of us has been through that ourselves as an individual. And that will kind of help us to kind of look at some things as we do. So let's kind of look at some things where we're going with this. We want to look at what I call the 4 seasons of parenting. We're not going to spend much on the last 2 seasons. But we want to talk about babies to school age, the teaching part. And at this phase, that's where a lot of our new parents are, at this phase, the child runs on emotion, okay? He doesn't care what hour of the night it is. If he's hungry, he's going to let you know. That's just where he's at. And one of the mistakes we sometimes do is try to reason with that child, and that child doesn't reason, okay? They want things, they see things, and we just spent a week with, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our grandkids, okay? And you walk through the gift store of these places, and can you come out without something in your hands? That's very hard to do sometimes. And so we'll talk about some of that. But that's the first stage. And we're going to spend the next several weeks on this. The next phase is what I call summer, school age to adult. And now you're reasoning. Now you're instructing. Now we can talk. Now we're not running on emotion. And this is one of the key things. From that first phase to the second phase, not only you as a parent but your child is to get them off of the emotion train and get them on the reasoning train. And we'll talk about how you do that. That's very important, because what happens is we see people who are school age, college age, adult, and are still running on emotion. And they should be running on reason by now. And so reason will govern you. There are things I want, but I can't afford them. So what do? Reason, okay? There's things that you're going to have to kind of put on the back burner on those things. And again, those are some things that will kind of come out. The third phase, we'll talk just a little bit about this. This is when your child becomes an adult. He's still your child, but now he's an adult. And the thing to understand now is if I'm treating my adult child like they were in that spring season, things are not going to work out because they have their own home. Jesus said in Matthew 19, as he talked about marriage, man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. The leaving of father and mother was not get a separate house, but as they are mature now. And so you have to address them that way. And so right there, what we're noticing is not only is parenting changing, but the child is changing. And if I'm doing my job, then they're growing from that emotional state to the reasoning state to their functioning adult where you can see them doing things as God wants. Final phase is when the child has to help the parents. And we won't talk much about that there, but that's some of those things. So on your outline, let's look at this passage here. This is one of the main passages, rather, that shows how God views children. Psalms 127, behold, children are a gift of the Lord. Fruit of the womb is a reward, like arrows in the hands of a warrior. So are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. 4 things I want you to notice out of this passage. Number 1, they're a gift. And it's non-returnable, okay? A gift from the Lord, okay? God is blessing you with that, and that's one of the words that's going to come out. He considers them to be a reward. How would we say they're a reward? Because a lot of people say, man, my kids cost. They cost, you know? They come into the world with nothing. You get this young couple in their 20s, and they're going to have a baby, and all this stuff you got to get. Good night. And it's like, when my kids show up, it's like they're backpacking across America. All this stuff. So how would you say that the Lord here is right because the children are a reward? How are they a reward? Zach, what would you say to that? Okay. We would say that they're a blessing. I think that's one of the words up here. Yeah, again, how blessed is that? It's a blessing, okay? And again, not only are you perpetuating a future generation, the idea is you're going to perpetuate them in the honor of the Lord. You're going to bring up somebody in the Lord. Those of us, as we use the expression, I don't like the expression, but grew up in the church, okay? I'm about 6th generation New Testament Christian. So my family goes way back into this. But to think, okay, here's another generation. And what did they do? They grew up, and now they're walking with the Lord. Here's another generation. What did they do? They grew up, and they're walking. And so you see that. And so I'm starting to see that with my little grandkids now. They know how their parents are raising them. It's not that they're just a bunch of little kids, but they're being taught how to be what God wants them to be. Now, he also says, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. What's that mean? What's that mean? Joe, you got any ideas on that one? So arrows in the hand of a warrior. What would a warrior do with an arrow? What's the purpose of that phrase? He'd use it as a weapon. Defense. That's his help. Okay? The idea that children will be the defense, they'll be the help. They're going to help you as you get older, okay? And that's one of the things that kind of gets to our spring, summer, fall, and winter aspect of parenting is that here's a man and he looks down the road, and he's not going to be down the road by himself. he's got these arrows. He's got these warriors. He's got these children that's going to grow up. They have a relationship where they help. And again, a lot of us have seen this. A lot of us have seen the taking care of an older grandparent or a parent, and you think nothing of that. Why? Because that's what you're supposed to do. And that's some of the things that kind of comes out of that and kind of helps us with that as we think about that. Now, as we talk about the principles of seasons here on your outline, again, some of this was borrowed from an earlier sermon I preached some time ago. What happens in one season impacts what follows. That's so important in parenting, okay? The idea that there are skirmishes and battles sometimes every single day, especially when they're little. But you have to win the war. And the war is eventually the salvation of their soul. The war is them pleasing God. The war is them becoming a servant. That's what you may lose a few battles here and there, okay? But that war is what's so important. And so we have to see that. Secondly, as we think about this, each season has its own challenges and wonderful blessings. I mean, all four, my youngest child is in his 30s. So, number one, I thought about when we developed these classes, why am I teaching this class? I don't have any little ones. But it fell to me to teach this class. And when my kids were born, I never liked the newborn age because I felt like something's going to drop off or I didn't know what to do. But once they could start crawling around, loved it. We'd get on the floor, we'd wrestle, we would do things. I could take them by the little hands and show them all kinds of things in the world. And I kept thinking, it never gets any better than this. And I wish we could just hit the pause button for like the next 2 decades and stay that way. But then it got to the school age. I thought, you know what, this is really cool. It's really cool to see them on stage singing or on a sports field. And to see that, it's really cool. When Sarah first started playing volleyball, I think she was in 6th grade. I mean, Debbie and I would be in the stands. We'd hold our breath because she'd serve underhand that ball. Oh, make the net, make the net, make the net, make the net. But then when she was in high school, she could serve about 2 inches above the net, straight line. And I remember the one game she nailed one girl. She was crying, and she kept hitting that girl, Oh, Dad was proud. But the point of that is, and now my kids, I can talk to them about parenting because that's what they are. And so each phase of life, you're going to think, man, it's not going to get better than this. And it does. It does. But it also has challenges, okay? I mean, the dreaded Saturday at Walmart with a 2-year-old. Oh, man, that's terrible, okay? But then the first time that child goes out driving by themselves, and they have a curfew. You be home by a certain hour, and boy, you're looking at 1 minute past. You're ready to call the morgue. They've been in the car wreck. But there's good things and there's challenges each and every time. Then the next lesson, there's a growing season, and one cannot put that off for another time. This is one of the key aspects we need to understand, especially when you're young with children. There's a lot of demands on your jobs, a lot of demands and pressures in other places, and you can't just hit the pause button and say, well, I'll just deal with this later on. Later on, these attitudes have become concrete. Later on, they're running more on emotion and they're not interested in reason. And so there are things like this. You have to have more patience than anyone else. And that's hard. And we'll talk about that later on. And then those that do not recognize the differences will suffer. And again, that's just a terrible thing about that. But again, that's why we're looking at this, to kind of help us consider these things. And so turn the page. The Lord knows, as well as the devil, the valuable role that the home places in our society. The home is a center of foundational learning. It impacts multiple generations. The home is the epicenter of life. It is in the home where your child will first learn the lessons of life. Authority, respect, servant, God, money. All those first lessons. And if they're not taught in the home, they'll learn them somewhere. But they may learn them the wrong way. And that's what makes it so important. Your child, one way or another, will have an opinion when he grows up about the Bible. It will either be the biblical concept that this is inspired by God, this is a message from heaven, or they'll learn in the college classroom that this is just a bunch of stories put together by man. Doesn't matter. But he'll learn one way. He'll learn about church, either the biblical way of worshiping God, or he'll find a church where all they're interested in is you. Be sure you get your t-shirt today. Be sure you get your coffee today. Be sure you got your donut today. Are you happy today? It's more about you than God. But one way or another, he'll learn about church. He'll learn about money. He'll learn about sex. He'll learn about marriage. And so that's why when we think about parenting, the pivotal lessons of life come not from the pulpit. We're just reinforcing what's done in the home. The home is where it's at, and that's why it's so important. And as it says on the right-hand side here, the child will take impressions with him from the home he was in to the home he was raised, to his own home. And so you're looking at future generations along that line. Okay? Anytime you got thought, jump in, okay? Because I'm just going down the road here. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute here. Let's talk about recognize immediately. Recognize immediately things have changed since you were a child. Yes, sir. And if that's all they see, then that's what I'm supposed to be. So if I grow up and dad's out of the picture, dad's not present, even if he is present, he's clueless because he's watching TV all the time or something, or he's asleep. He's not parenting. And if that's the way I grew up, then guess what? That's the kind of home he's going to have. Okay? Now it's interesting. When God designed the home, okay, very, very first pages of the book of Genesis, he designed it with a man and a woman. Now, there are single parents today because of different things, different circumstances. But God's design is to have a man and a woman. And a man and a woman are going to bring different things to the table. That child falls down, scrapes his leg, he's going to run to mom. Okay? Mom's going to kiss it, give him hugs. Dad's going to say, be tough and walk it off. He doesn't want that. He wants mom. But something breaks, he's going to run to dad. Dad, this is broken. Can you fix this? And so that male-female togetherness is necessary in the home. That right there tells me that the way mom approaches and sees things may be differently than the way dad approaches and sees things, and together they got to blend that together, okay? Your child very, very, very early on will learn who's the softie, and they'll push that button. And they'll learn the one who caves in. You know, mom says no, but I'm running to dad because dad always says yes. Okay? And so it's important as parents that you're on the same page, because that this won't work. You're going to have all kinds of trouble. And to what Danny was saying, dysfunction is not new to our culture. You look at the life of King David. David could conquer the world, but he couldn't conquer his own family. His family was a mess. He had one of his sons rape one of his daughters. And then one of his other sons, because David did nothing about that, he did nothing, then one of the other sons killed that son who was the rapist. And then still David did nothing. And then that son wants to become king, and so he tries to kill his own father. You just look at that from a standpoint of a home, you think, what a mess. And maybe it was because David was so busy conquering the world, he forgot to conquer his own family. And so that's some things we have to see. So lesson number one, understand things have changed since you were a child. Grandmas and grandpas, this is important for us. Okay? Things have really changed. I don't know which way it is now. I forget which way it is now. But I remember when we had little ones, You know, you don't put them on their bellies. Now you put them on the back. I mean, it's flip-flopped how it used to be. And you just have to understand, things have changed. Changed a lot. Now let's just look on your outline here. This is just a sad picture of the world today, but I want you to look at this, and then we'll ask the question, why does this matter? Parents asked in a survey, would you rather have 5 more hours at home a week or $10,000? 83% took the money. They'd rather have the money than 5 more hours at home. There's a 37% increase in teenage depression today. 200% increase in suicide rate on children between ages of 10 and 14. Age 10, think about taking their life. You see? Now, as we run through these, don't think, well, this is just those people out there. It's kids across the board. It's kids within here, okay? Nearly 14,000 minors underwent same-sex sex change operation or procedures in recent years. Most common injury for women between ages of 15 and 44 is domestic violence. 1 of 6 of these women were in a church were abused verbally at home. 3 out of 10 are abused physically. Nearly 17 million children do not live with their fathers. 3 out of 14 surveys said that they live with no rules, no deadlines, no curfews. Down below here in this box, today's child is filled with digitally distracted parents. That's going to get personal to some of us, but it is. You go out to eat, you'll see 4 people at a table, and all 4 have their phones. Can't you talk to each other? That's our world today. We need to talk about, in here, and we'll need to talk about this, about the idea of the digital nanny. There's a time and a place for it. But how easy it is just to put that phone with a little video on there for a little child or in the backseat of the car, and constantly, that's what they have all the time. There's a place for that, but there's also a place for just looking out the windows and talking, okay? Permissive parents who let their children make the rules, sense of entitlement without earning or being responsible, poor sleep and unbalanced nutrition, sedentary lifestyle, endless stimulation, technological nannies. And again, that's the world we live in today. So why, over here on the right-hand side, gray box, why should I be concerned about these things? My child's going to be different. I'm not going to do that. So why do I be concerned?
Well, okay, I'm going to start out with this is good. If you are concerned, you need to bring your child up in a way that would help them help one of the other kids that are in trouble.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the bad part is if you don't, then they don't have the foundation
Okay.
to
Okay.
keep them on the right.
And why I'm concerned about this is because my kids' friends at school, my kids' friends in this congregation, my kids' friends, some of them, that may be their world. And so I'm going to, whether I keep my child out of that or not, I am going to be introduced to that. And we have to deal with that. Okay, the next one that we need to recognize immediately, you cannot pass the responsibility of parenting on to someone else or delay being an active parent. This includes grandparents. Okay, we may watch our grandkids for a while, but we are not the one who is responsible. The parents are. And again, with jobs and the world we live in, this is something you got to think about. Number 3, as your child ages, you will no longer be the most important person in his life. That's hard for us to understand. But again, you think about yourself. Okay, love your parents. But your parents are not the most important person in your life today. Your spouse is, your kids are. So that role is going to change. And that's hard. Now one of the things I want to bring out here and have us understand, and sometimes this is a mistake we make, is that I want to be my child's buddy. Well, buddies and parents are not the same. Buddies have no rules. Buddies never lay down the law. You are a parent, not the buddy. And so there comes a time when child's not going to like it. One of my kids told me one time, "Dad, you are the worst parent on the face of the earth." I said, "Really?" I said, I've never won any contest. I said, can I put that on a plaque? I'll put that on. And they said, Dad, I can't even insult you. But you know, there's going to be a time when you're going to cross that barrier, and you have to be the parent. Because if you're not, no one else will. And that's your role. Number 4, your child has a major advantage because of you. I want you to understand that. Your child's going to grow up understanding responsibility. They'll cry and scream when it came time to pick up their toys at the end of the night, but you can get them to do that. Accountability, respect, serving, walking with your God. Your child's going to be light years ahead of most children today because this is what you're after, okay? This is what you're going to do. And again, we'll talk about some of these things that will face that. Challenges facing godly parents today: maintain a godly atmosphere in a very ungodly world. That's our world today. Raising boys to be men of God and girls to be virtuous women. Okay, that's counter to our culture today. But how to be a godly man, how to be a godly woman, how do I embrace what God wants? So those are the virtues that's coming out. Balancing demands at work and home. Determining how much social media influence. That's a problem for some of us. And we know if it's a problem for some of us, it's going to get into some of those other things. So real quickly here, let's go to the myths of parenting. Number 1, I'm to be the super parent. Oh, you want to believe that. You want your child to look in your closet and there hangs a Superman's cape. That's who I am. Well, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not. That's just a myth. You'll make mistakes and you'll have to grow through the process. But you're not the super parent.
Okay, I have just a couple of observations. One is I'm a job coach for people with disabilities. Okay. What you're going all around about, they now call gentle parenting.
Yeah.
A better word for that is neglectful parenting.
Okay.
As a job coach, I very often can tell right off if a person has good parenting or neglectful parenting. If they haven't had good parenting, they are going to be successful.
Yeah.
If not in our realm, they need to go to job readiness training because they have absolutely
No skills.
no skills.
No. And there's all these words such as helicopter mom, tiger mom, let's see, retro parents. I mean, there's all these phrases people use today. Like, just be what God wants you to be. Don't worry what title it is. But that's the thought there, okay? Number 2, the older my kids get, the easier it will be to raise them. That's really not true. I mean, you think of that little bitty baby, you think, oh, he cries all the time, or when will they ever be out of diapers, you know? But then, I remember telling this to a family in Kansas City. My kids were teenagers. They had little bitty kids. What's the difference between where you are and they are? I said, when your kid breaks a toy, you just throw it away and buy a new one. When my kid breaks something, it costs me $1,000. Dad, I lost my phone. Well, where was it? Well, it was on the top of the car. And, oh, no. Yes, we have driven up and down the road, dialing the number, listening. Where it was, yes. But the thing is, there's challenges. There's challenges. And I think as you go through this, you know, it's interesting. God doesn't start you off with teenagers. He doesn't do that. And so as a child grows, you are growing. You're growing in faith. You're growing in patience. And so when you get to maybe more difficult areas, dating, that's a difficult area, okay? You're not ready for that when you're 20 years old and you're young. You're ready for that by the time the child is that age. You have grown and you've learned and you've taught him things. And that's some of the things that comes about from that. If I take my child to church, they shouldn't have any problems. Wrong. I go to church, I got problems. You go to church, you got problems. We all got problems. So it's just a myth. Now again, what some people do is they want the church to raise their kids. No, the church says, we only get them a little bit every week. Your job is to raise them, okay? And you're to instill. You know what? The lessons at home and the lessons out of this pulpit ought to be the same. We don't practice one thing here on Sunday and then on Monday, Tuesday, and the rest of the week we do something different. There has to be a consistency. And so that's just one of the myths. The goal is to have happy children. Well, what do you think about that one? What's your thoughts on that? Nathan, what's your thought on this one? My goal is to have happy kids. Yeah. We're not happy every day, are we? And we find out, if going to Walmart and buying them a cheap toy makes them happy, they'll play with it for 5 minutes, now I'm not happy anymore, you're going to be buying things all your life. And so there'll be moments where they say, I'm bored. One of my grandkids did this past week. I'm bored. I said, great. I got a whole list of things you can do. I'm not bored anymore. Okay. I'm not happy. Well, let's find something you can do. See? And so you're training them. You're getting them to see. Is there, there's nothing really joyous about taking out the trash. That's not one of the highlights of my week. Changing a dirty diaper is not one of the blessings you're going to remember the rest of your life. I mean, I have never figured out, if they can make a button that cleans the oven by itself, why can't they put a button on a diaper and you just push it, it cleans itself? I can never figure that out. Where are the engineers to do that? But they don't do that. So not every moment's going to be happy. That's okay. That does not mean you failed as a parent. Okay? Because life has ups, life has downs. There are mountaintops, there's valleys. And we have to talk about how we go through those. Number 5, if my kid struggles, it's my fault. One of the things I recognize more than anything else from parents my age and just a little bit under my age is just the huge amount of regret and guilt that they carry. Again, when you look at Luke 15, the prodigal son, God is the father. Is anyone going to say that one of the reasons the prodigal went away was the fault of the father? No one's going to blame God. He is the perfect parent. Yet Israel went into apostasy because they would not follow God. So as your child grows, there's going to be sins and mistakes and disagreements. Don't always pin that on yourself. That's my fault. Sometimes that might be your fault, and you need to improve from that. But it's not always your fault. I have failed my family if we do not do fabulous vacations, Family down the street, they got to go to Europe. We didn't get to go to Europe. Family down the street, they vacation 5 and 6 times a year. So our family can't afford. No, don't compare. When you start comparing yourself, you're going to feel negative, and you're going to feel like that failure, and that's not going to help you at all. And then, as I said earlier, I'm to be my child's best friend. That will be that way when they're little for a little while, but that will change. That will change. It doesn't take very fast till they have a cousin, or they'll have somebody here in the congregation in their Bible class becomes their best friend. And then they're going to grow up and have other best friends. And then one day they're going to marry their best friend. And you're going to realize, I'm not number one anymore. But that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way God designed it. And so if we don't get this, we will be jealous, and we'll be injecting ourselves where we don't belong, and just makes a mess of things. So again, you think about your own life right now. Is your parent your best friend? Probably not. But high on the list they are. But others, your mates, your best friend, your kids right now are your best friend. And so this is something that, again, that shows that change that takes place when we think about the roles of parenting with that. So this is kind of the intro. Thoughts up to this point? I've been doing a lot of jammering here. Any thoughts or comments about this? They are. They are. Charlie said struggles are learning points, and they are. Isn't that what James 1 talks about? Through the trials we learn, and we learn perseverance, if you make your life, and that's one of the words, I forget which word that is. Let me see. That is the lawnmower parent. Okay, I'd never heard that before. The lawnmower parent makes sure everything is smooth. But life is not like that. Sooner or later in life, he's going to realize it's not smooth. So the sooner he learns that and deals with challenges, disappointments, the better it's going to be. And that's some things with that. Okay, we will stop for now, and next week we will continue on. We'll be focusing on the spring aspect and some lessons we have to learn from